was just watching this hive about an hour ago, and it's only about 10:30 in the morning, so I was a bit surprised to see what I thought was orientation flights and cleansing flights. Turns out it wasn't that at all, and these girls had decided to swarm. So let me just bring you over here, around the front yard, and it doesn't look as though they're going to go too far. I'm hoping they are going to stay in the front yard and possibly settle. They seem to be clustering around this bush at the front, so I'm hoping that the queen will just find somewhere on this bush to settle, and then the swarm will cluster around her, and then I'll be able to put them in a box. So I'm just going to sit and watch them, and it certainly looks as though they're getting very dense around this bush. So I suspect the queen has landed somewhere there, and hopefully they won't make it too hard for me to get them in the box when they do land. Hope they don't go right for the top of the bush, which means I'll have to get a ladder, but that's okay. But they're certainly very concentrated at the top of that bush there. Hopefully you can see them. So they'll settle quite quickly. It doesn't take them long. When they're in flight, it looks like there's a million bees in the air, but once they cluster and settle down, it's not too bad. And I can see them already clustering at the very top of that bush there. So she's already landed. Okay, I've done a quick run around. I've got all the gear that I need, and I'm ready to get these girls in the box. So I've got a 10 frame box ready to go. My suit. Now, what else I've got? I've got my ladder. Obviously these girls have decided to cluster in this small medium-sized bush. They're about 3 meters up, so it's doable with the ladder. Any taller and we'd have to use a different strategy to get the bees down. Secateurs are always good, because what I'm going to do is use this bucket, and I'm going to shake the bees into the bucket, put the lid on really quickly, and then come down the ladder and then gently tip the bees into the box. It's too hard to manhandle this box up and shake them straight into the box. It's far too heavy, and I'd rather just use the bucket. I've used this technique before and it works really well, so I'm going to do it again. So a pair of secateurs just to prune the odd branches around so that you can get the bucket neatly up underneath, and a nice clean shake, all the bees in the box, in the bucket rather. And then this, I really like using the sugar water. It settles them down, it just makes them cluster. I mean, they are so tightly packed, there's hardly any bees flying around. And as I said, someone could walk straight past this bush and not even know those bees were there, because they just cluster now and they'll really settle. And so now the trick is to give them a bit of a spray with some sugar water just to settle them. Get the bucket in underneath the swarm as best I can, and then give that branch a very firm, intense shake, and hopefully most of that cluster will drop straight into the bucket. Just at the moment the bees have just gone in. There's a lot of fanning going on, but you'd expect that, and there could be fanning all over the place because I've disrupted where the queen was. and there's must be a lot of scent flying around. So there's a lot of girls at the entrance there, and they soon pick up where the queen is. So I'm hoping from all that activity that I did get the queen in the bucket and then in the box, and so it's just a matter of waiting and seeing. So there's certainly a lot of bees milling around. Quite often it doesn't take them long. If I hadn't got the queen in the box, what tends to happen is that they will fan and carry on at the entrance for a little while. Then they realise the queen's not in the box, and you'll suddenly realise, you'll know, because the bees will start pouring back out of the box, taking flight and going back up to the tree. Okay, so my first attempt at getting the bees in the box was clearly unsuccessful. I left them for about an hour, and it looked as though the queen was in the box, but the clump on the branch wasn't getting any smaller, and just about 10 minutes ago I noticed there were bees starting to come back there, and then we had a swarm out of the box, and now they're all clustering back on the branch. So clearly I didn't get the queen, so we're going to have another go at the bucket, see if we can get her this time. Oh, the joys of beekeeping and getting swarms in boxes. Okay, our first attempt wasn't successful. I clearly didn't get the queen because she was still up there in that small cluster. So we've had another go, and I'm going to put these bees in the box, and just as a backup I'm going to go back up and shake the remaining bees off that branch now that there's less on there and it's more manageable, just in case I've missed her a second time. So let's get these girls in the box. Right, so I've just gone back up and I've dislodged the remaining bees that were hanging on the branch. It was a bit of a fork, so it was a bit hard to get all of the bees the first time. But this time I've gone back up and got that remaining bit of the cluster, and I gave the branch a really good shake. So I've dislodged all of the bees. So now I'm pretty confident that I have got the queen either in the first go or in this second bucket. Okay, so it's been a couple of hours since I had to have that second go at getting these bees in the box and shake them into the tub. I'm pretty confident this time that I've got the queen in the box. There's only a few scout bees going back to the branch up in the bush, and they're just milling around and then coming back down here. And there's still a lot of activity at the front of the hive. When I was watching it the first time, the activity at the front started to wane off. There were less bees fanning as the time went on, and then when I checked them just before they swarmed out of the box, there were bees going straight back and joining back onto the cluster. So at that point I was thinking that the queen was still on that branch. Now, a couple of hours later, there's still a lot of activity at the front of the hive. There's still several bees fanning. So I am 99.9% sure that I've got the queen in the box this time. So what I'm going to do now is, because these bees caught me a bit short and I only had 4 frames made up, which are in the box at the moment, I'm just going to plonk these other 6 frames in so that they've got a full box of frames. They'll draw out comb pretty quickly, so I don't want to give these girls any opportunity to build burr comb around the side of the box. I'll get these frames in nice and early, and then I'll leave them in peace to settle down and draw out comb and start bringing home nectar and pollen. Okay, and there we have it. So another successful swarm in the box. The great thing about beekeeping is that you might think you know you've got them pegged and you know what's going on, but these girls will always throw in a trump card and let you know that you haven't quite got it right each time. So every time you work the bees, every time you catch a swarm, it's always a bit of a learning curve, but watching their behaviour and just taking time to sit and watch them, the bees will tell you an awful lot. You don't have to always jump in and be trying to manipulate them too quickly. let them tell you what's going on.